Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. Chapter 1. My Parents and Early Life. The characteristic features of Indian culture have long been a search for ultimate verities and the concomitant disciple guru relationship. My own path led me to a Christ like sage whose beautiful life was chiseled for the ages. He was one of the great masters who are India's sole remaining wealth. Emerging in every generation, they have bulwarked their land against the fate of Babylon and Egypt. I find my earliest memories covering the anachronistic features of a previous incarnation. Clear recollections came to me of a distant life, a yogi, amidst the Himalayan snows. These glimpses of the past, by some dimensionless link, also afforded me a glimpse of the future. The helpless humiliation of infancy are not banished from my mind. I was resentfully conscious of not being able to walk or express myself freely. Prayerful surges arose within me as I realized my bodily impotence. My strong emotional life took silent form as words in many languages. Among the inward confusions of tongues, my ear gradually accustomed itself to the circumambient Bengali syllables of mine. The bewailing scope of an infant's mind, adultly considered limited to toys and toes. Psychological ferment and my unresponsive body brought me to many obstinate crying spells. I recall the general family of bewilderment at my distress. Happier memories too crowd in one of me. My mother's caresses, and my first attempt at lip-sync phrase in toddling step. These early triumphs, usually forgotten quickly, are yet a natural basis of self-confidence. My far-reaching memories are not unique. Many yogis are known to have retained their self-consciousness without interruption by the dramatic transition to and from life and death. If man be a soulful, a body, its loss indeed places the final period to identify. But if prophets down the millenniums spark with truth, man is essentially of incorporeal nature. The persistent core of human egoity is only temporarily allied with sense. Although odd, clear memories of infancy are not extremely rare, during travels in numerous lands I have listened to early recollections from the lips of veracious men and women. I was born in the last decade of the 19th century and passed my first 8 years at Gorakhpur. This was my birthplace in the United Provinces of northeastern India. We were 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. I, Mukundalal Ghosh, was the second son and the 4th child. Father and mother were Bengalis of Kshatriya caste. Both were blessed with saintly nature. Their mutual love, tranquil and dignified, never expressed itself frivolously. A perfect parental harmony was a calm center for the revolving tumult of 8 young lives. Father, Bhagavati Charan Ghosh, was kind, grave, at times stern. Loving him dearly, we children yet observe a certain reverential distance. An outstanding mathematician and logician, he was guided principally by his intellect. But mother was a queen of hearts, and taught us only through love. After our death, father played more of his inner tenderness. I noticed then that his gaze often metamorphosed into my mother's. In mother's presence, we tasted our earliest bitter, sweet acquaintance with the scriptures. Tales from Mahabharata and Ramayana were resourcefully summoned to meet the exigencies of discipline. Instructions and chastisement went hand in hand. A daily gesture of respect to father was given by mothers dressing us carefully in the afternoons to welcome him home from the office. His position was similar to that of vice president in the Bengal Nagpur Railway, one of the India's large companies. His work involved traveling, and our family lived in several cities during my childhood. Mother held an open hand towards the needy. Father was also kindly disposed, but his respectful law and order extended to the budget. One fortnight, mother spent in feeding the poor more than father's monthly income. All I ask, please, is to keep your charities within a reasonable limit. Even a gentle rebuke from her husband was grievous to mother. She ordered a hackney carriage, not hinting to the children at any disagreement. Good. Bye. I am going away to my mother's home. Ancient ultimatum. We broke into astounded lamentations. Our maternal uncle arrived opportunely. He whispered to my father some sage counsel garnered, no doubt, from the ages. After father had made a few conciliatory remarks, mother happily dismissed the cab. Thus ended the only trouble I ever noticed between my parents. But I recall a characteristic discussion. Please give me 10 rupees for hapless women who has just arrived at the house. Mother's smile had its own persuasion. Why 10 rupees? One is enough. Father added a justification. When my father and grandparents died suddenly, I had my first taste of poverty. My only breakfast before walking miles to my school was small banana. Later at the university was in such need that I applied to a wealthy judge for aid of 1 rupee per month. He declined, remarking that even a rupee is important. How bitterly you recall the denial of that rupee. Mother's heart had an instant logic. Do you want this woman also to remember painfully your refusal of 10 rupees which she needs urgently? You win. With immemorial gestures of vanquished husbands, he opened his wallet. Here is 10 rupee note. Give it to her with my goodwill. Father tended to first say no to any new proposal. His attitude towards a strange woman who so readily enlisted mother's sympathy was an example of his customary caution. Aversion to instant acceptance, typical of the French mind in the West, is really only honoring the principle of due reflection. I always found father's reasonable and evenly balanced in his judgment. If I could bolster up my numerous requests with 1 or 2 good arguments, he invariably put the coveted goal within my reach, whether it were a vacation trip or a new motorcycle. Father was a strict disciplinarian to his children in the early years, but his attitude towards himself was truly Spartan. He never visited the theater, for instance, but sought his recreation in various spiritual practices and reading the Bhagavad Gita. Shunning all luxuries, he would cling to one of the old pairs of shoes until they were useless. His sons bought automobiles after they came into popular use. The father was always content with the trolley car for his daily ride to the office. The accumulation of money for the sake of power was alien to his nature. Once, after organizing the Calcutta Urban Bank, he refused to benefit himself by holding any of its shares. He had simply wished to perform a civic duty in his spare time. Several years after father had retired on a pension, an English accountant arrived to examine the book of Bengal Nagpur Railway Company. The amazed investigator discovered that father had never applied for overdue bonuses. He did the work of 3 men, the accountant told the company. He has rupees 1,25,000 owing to him a back compensation. The official presented father with a check for this amount. He thought so little about it that he overlooked any mention to the family. Much later, he was questioned by my youngest brother Vishnu, who noticed a large deposit on a bank statement. Why be elated by material profit? Father replied. The one who pursues a goal of even-mindedness is neither jubilant with gain nor depressed by loss. He knows that man arrives penniless in this world and departs without a single penny. My father, Bhagavati Charan Ghosh, was a prudent disciple of Lahiri Mahasaya. Early in their married life, my parents became disciples of great master Lahiri Mahasaya of Benares. This contact strengthened father's naturally aesthetical temperament. Mother made a remarkable admission to my eldest sister Roma. Your father and myself live together as a man and wife only once a year for the purpose of having children. Fathers first met Lahiri Mahasaya through Avinash Babu, an employee in the Gorakhpur office of the Bengal Nagpur Railway. Avinash instructed my young ears with engrossing tales of many Indian saints. He invariably concluded with a tribute to the superior glories of his own guru. Did you ever hear of the extraordinary circumstances under which your father became a disciple of Lahiri Mahasaya? It was on a lazy summer afternoon, as Avinash and I sat together in the compound of my home, that he put this intriguing question. I shook my head with a smile of anticipation. Years ago, before you were born, I asked my superior officer, your father, to give me a week's leave from my Gorakhpur duties in order to visit my guru in Benares. Your father ridiculed my plan. Are you going to become a religious fanatic? He inquired. Concentrate on your office work if you want to forge ahead. Sadly walking home along a woodland path that day, I met your father in a palanquin. He dismissed his servants and convenience and fell into step beside me. Seeking to console me, he pointed out the advantages of striving for worldly success. But I heard him listlessly. My heart was repeating, Lahiri Mahasaya, Lahiri Mahasaya, Lahiri Mahasaya. I cannot leave without seeing you. Our path took us to the edge of a tranquil field where the rays of the late afternoon sun were still crowning the tall ripple of the wild grass. We paused in admiration. There in the field, only a few yards from us, the form of my great guru suddenly appeared. Bhagavati, you are too hard on your employee. His voice was resonating in our astounded ears. He vanished as mysteriously as he had come. On my knees, I was exclaiming, Lahiri Mahasaya, Lahiri Mahasaya. Your father was motionless with stupefaction for a few moments. Avinash, not only do I give you leave, but I give myself leave to start for Benares tomorrow. I must know this great Lahiri Mahasaya who is able to materialize himself at will in order to intercede for you. I will take my wife and ask this master to initiate us in the spiritual path. Will you guide me? Of course. Joy filled me at miraculous answer to my prayers and the quick favorable turn of event. The next evening, your parents and I entrained for Benares. We took a horse cart the following day and then had to walk through the narrow lanes to my guru's secluded home. Entering his little parlor, we bowed before the master, and locked in his habitual lotus posture, he blinked his piercing eyes and leveled them on your father. Bhagavati, you are too hard on your employee. His words were the same as those he had used 2 days before in Gorakhpur field. He added, I'm glad that you have allowed Avinash to visit me and that you and your wife have accompanied him. To their joy, he initiated your parents in the spiritual practice of Kriya Yoga. Your father and I, as brother disciples, have been close friends since the memorable day of the vision. Lahiri Mahasaya took a definite interest in your own birth. Your life shall surely be linked with his own. The Master's blessing never fails.